Brought down by bad mortgage investments, Lehman, which has 25,000 employees, will be liquidated.
The federal government loans American International Group, AIG, $85 billion.
This is a different kind of market, and the Fed is asleep.
The federal government is stepping in to stabilize Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, the two mortgage giants that have been threatened by the housing crisis.
The Bank of England has pumped £75 billion more into Britain's ailing economy with a new round of quantitative easing.
You print a couple $1 trillion, and all of a sudden, people start to worry. So out of this worry, we have something called the Bitcoin.
Welcome to On the Brink. I'm Matt Walsh.
And I'm Nick Carter.
And this episode is brought to you by Coinmetrics. And a lot of good things happening over at Coinmetrics. We're hiring some great people. We've got very outstanding new products on the horizon. And I was told, I had a conversation with some of the higher ups at CM, and they said that they did get you a jacket.
But I'm not aware of said jacket. Where is the jacket?
I think it's in process. There was people listened to the podcast, and there were some people that were thrown under the bus because of the lack of jackets for you.
I hope that whoever was responsible for the jacket was disciplined.
We're gonna keep names out of it, but yeah.
I'm waiting. I don't see a jacket. I'm cold. I'm chilly.
A lot of good data over at Coinmetrics. A lot to dig into. So coinmetrics.io. Head on over there. You had a busy week. You had a new article, Proof of Reserves. It's a passion project of yours.
I was actually thinking to myself this morning, what compels me to spend my time writing about this stuff? And I don't have an answer.
Yeah, you're literally obsessed with proving reserves of crypto assets. It's a literal obsession.
Doesn't add any value to my life. It only causes me harm.
Well, you don't. It saved a lot of personal trauma, right? You're not putting assets on venues that don't prove reserves.
Well, that's not strictly true, actually.
You prefer not to.
I mean, look, not everyone does POR yet. Not everyone does it. Only 11 exchanges, as far as I can tell, have done it.
We'll link to this in our newsletter, but you wrote a Policymakers guide to proving reserves. Do you think any policymakers will actually read this?
I'm going to send it to a couple and hope that they do.
I think there's a good shot that like an Emmer type would read this.
If you're listening, Tom, please read my article. I wrote it for you.
Upvote it on LinkedIn. I don't know. It would be nice to have some bipartisan support for proving reserves, but I will take bipartisan support for just give us some spot market clarity. Just tell us if it's the SEC or the CFTC. This whole industry can move on.
So did we talk about it, though, in the Texas legislation that was introduced? I think we did last week, right?
We did. So Texas is doing proof of reserves as part of their whole statewide legislation.
At least they'll consider. I don't know if this bill will pass. I hope it does. So at least some folks in Texas are aware of POR. So, my target audience for this article is there's very few.
Proving reserves is like a nice to have after spot market clarity for me. I'm not as passionate about it as you. I just think, if you think about what really moves the needle here, I get that proof of reserves is great, but I think the market structure is going to evolve such that exchanges don't hold your assets in the first place. So maybe we're just talking about
custodians would then do it. Like there's someone has the reserves.
Yeah, I think the custodians would prove reserves eventually. But really what we need is just the spot market to be overseen by a federal regulator as opposed to state by state. And we need the SEC to stop fighting with the CFTC over whether or not this is a jurisdictional issue on each side. So we just need over-the-top, bipartisan, comprehensive legislation starting with that issue.
The White House doesn't seem to like crypto very much. Did you read their statement? Was it last week?
I did.
Very tough.
I did.
I mean, honestly, we're kind of under broadside assault this week. Charlie Munger came. He crawled out of his hole. I mean,
Charlie Munger, Charlie Munger, you got to hand it to the guy. There's not a lot of things that could get me that pissed off if I was close to 100 years old, but cryptocurrency for him is a trigger.
So he's 99 years old. Is that correct? He's 99?
That's my understanding.
And why is he writing op-eds in the Wall Street Journal? How is that a fun activity for him at this point in his life?
And he's writing op-eds that, hey, we should be more like China. We should do this,
He
and
said
this.
that.
Why would we try to be more like China in anything?
He said we need to take a leaf out of China's book. Like, Charlie, what's going on?
I don't know. It's when you think about it from the perspective of if you're, a billionaire and you're sitting, crypto is a pretty game-changing type of thing. You could see how it would be threatening.
Oh, yeah. Do you remember those academics, Griffin and Shams, from 2017? They're the ones that were basically the godfather of all the Tether truthers.
I do. That? I remember. You went on a podcast with Mike Green and you really discredited Griffins and Shams.
It's like the worst academic article of all time, I think.
So
I think it's worse than
tee it
Moore
up.
at
I think
all.
they said their original paper tee up what they said originally, not what they're saying.
So this was an infamous paper, for those who don't recall, in 2017, basically saying it was published in the Journal of Finance, which is actually a good journal, which astonished me. I mean, it's malpractice basically for them to publish this thing. Basically, they said that Tether was used to support the price of Bitcoin. They did some insane regression analysis and decided that Tether was being strategically printed to, cause the bull run in Bitcoin. And they looked at on-chain data and decided this supported their assertion. They didn't have any actual proof of this. It's just all inferential data mining, data science. Basically, the wrong people got their hands on Stata or SPSS and decided to do some regressions and drew insane conclusions from it. So of course, there was never any evidence that, Tether was the cause of the bull run in 2017.
Right.
Nor was there any that it was the cause of the bull run this time around. I mean, it's more as the asset prices increase, balance sheets increase, and people need dollars to transact with, and
right.
There's just more dollars floating around the system. So it's not like there's not a complicated explanation for why stable coins might increase as the crypto market cap increases. And so now they're back. They had this big article in Fortune, and they're basically claiming that they were vindicated and that it's happening again. So whenever the coin prices go up, they claim manipulation. What do they say when the coin prices go down?
The price of what's Bitcoin up 35% month over month here. So what's happening is that the price of Bitcoin's going up, and there's more demand for dollars in this equation, and so of course they just see it, and they when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
So this Fortune article says they proved manipulation in 2017. So basically, for a no coiner, they can't explain why the price of Bitcoin went up, so they have to find some other explanation, which is apparently Tether. So they purportedly proved in 2017 that Tether caused the price of Bitcoin to go up. Not people buying Bitcoin or anything like that. It was all Tether. And they're back. They did a victory lap, and now they think that Bitcoin rallying, from roughly 16,000 to 23,000 is incredibly suspicious, and it's Tether's fault again. The whole thing's manipulation. There's one cause. The market's not complex. Everything is monocausal, according to these people.
Tough. I mean, one of these guys is a college professor.
Yeah, the academic laundering of concepts that should at most be tweets or blog posts is insane. So if you can write something up in an academic model and maybe even get it published, you can actually get the press to repeat your insane claims, which is DeVries' whole thing in terms of the Bitcoin energy debate. I mean, tons of the Bitcoin energy debate went that way because the press seems to think that academia is more credible than just industry people saying stuff. And it's the same here. This paper got rebroadcast so many times because the press was desperate to find academics that would explain Bitcoin's price movement. It's just that the explanations were insane.
In other Castle Island content this week, Ria sat down with Julian Nissette, who's the co-founder of Argent. They talked about account abstraction and smart contract wallets. So that was a really enjoyable episode. I like that one.
Yet another extremely big-brained episode from Rhea.
Just account abstraction. She gets into the really technical stuff. It makes us look a lot better as a podcast.
Yeah, I mean, it raises the intellectual caliber of this podcast several notches.
We're sitting over here talking about getting our ears blown out on flights and Tom Brady retiring, which we have to get to. But Maria's over there talking about MEV and account abstraction.
So I had the chance to interrogate some loyal members of Brink Nation this week, and I asked them what they liked about the podcast.
That's good. A little user survey. I like
Yeah, so I'm gathering feedback.
Okay. What it hit me?
They said they liked it when we just told stories and like messed around instead of actually talking about the substance.
Well, that's what we do in slow news weeks.
So I guess maybe we should just forget the deals in the news and just do like stories.
Just stories. I don't know if I have enough stories though to carry the day.
Yeah, I'm all storiesed out.
Could go back to my heyday of stories, but I don't know. I'm kind of boring these days.
You had some good stuff in the early days of the podcast for sure.
Yeah, I better stories a long time ago, but we could talk about football. We could talk about, stuff like that.
I just haven't watched enough football, but I could talk about pickleball.
That's true. You could definitely talk about pickleball.
I'm getting good. A lot of people are really doubting that in the space of a month I could become a competitive pickleball player. I'd say I'm pretty good now.
I definitely need to give this a shot. Maybe we should have a little tournament. We still have a vibrant community over at gm.xyz. So head over to gm.xyz/onthebrink if you want to talk about the podcast. That's where people hang out to talk.
We are releasing a digital trinket. I know we've said it for some time now. We do plan on doing it.
So should we get to the deals of the week?
All right, we have a Castle Island deal. First up, Groma. They're a company building at the intersection of real estate and blockchains. They raised $20 million in a Series A led by us, Castle Island, with participation from Bantam Group, Echelon, Launchpad, and Osborne Capital. Congrats to Groma.
I'm really excited about this one. So I'm joining the board of Groma. Groma is started by Seth Prebach up here in Boston, formerly the founder of Level Up. So great team over there, and we will be talking more about Groma, I'm sure, in the months to come. Next one up is Hypernative. This is a crypto security startup. They raised $9 million from BoldStart, Alchemy, Blockdaemon, CMT Digital, and Borderless.
Then we've got Vest. They're a decentralized exchange building on Arbitrum. They raised a seed from Jane Street and QCP.
Next, we have Archimedes. This is a DeFi lending and borrowing marketplace. They've raised $7.3 million from Hack VC, Uncorrelated, and others.
Then we've got Sovereign Labs, apparently a company focused on scaling technologies, is what it says here. They raised $7.4 million from Han Ventures.
And the last one is Squid. This is a cross-chain liquidity protocol. They raised $3.5 million from our friends at North Island Ventures, Distributed Global, Fabric Ventures, Chapter One, and others. Squid, that's an interesting name. Did you ever use squid as a derogatory put-down when you were growing up? That was a big put-down.
Really?
If you didn't like someone, you call them a squid.
That must be a Boston Irish Catholic thing.
It might be. It's definitely not someone from Boston that started this company. It's like I've actually squid.
I know a lot of slurs, but that's not one.
Yeah, no, you wouldn't want to be called a squid. I'm not exactly sure what it means. Is it someone who has no backbone, bad. Maybe? Yeah, someone who is a squid.
I'll happily start to use that.
No offense, but I'm sure that it's a great cross-chain liquidity protocol. It's very malleable.
So, should we just start with the FTX crime family? Is that?
I guess actually, what I'd like to start is with a new induction to the Bad Boys Club. We didn't do it last week, so let's hit the music.
Yeah. Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you?
All right, so this one, it's a miracle that it took us this long to get this to this particular individual. He's actually one of the baddest of boys.
I can't believe that we never did this before, but Alex Mashinsky, come on down and get your introductory membership to the Bad Boys Club. Alex Mashinsky, the founder of Celsius, somehow, we haven't talked about this yet, but what happened this week was an independent examiner report came out as part of the bankruptcy filing for Celsius. It's 400 plus pages. I didn't read all of it. There's some great tweet storms that summarized it. Ram Aluwalia over there at Lumina put out a great tweet storm about it. We'll put that in our newsletter as well. Turns out Alex Mashinsky, kind of what people were saying about him, turned out to be true. So he was manipulating the price of Cell tokens, which was the native token to Celsius, and he cashed out to the tune of $68 million, and he was propping it up, according to the examiner's report, with customer funds. And he was treating the place like a prop shop, slinging around customer funds the whole time. So looks like this thing was a Ponzi from way before the bankruptcy filing, early 2021, according to this report. So I don't know how this doesn't end really poorly with criminal charges after reading a report like that. I don't know where else this goes.
Yeah, this is a huge, huge mess. There's just no positive interpretation of this report at all.
No. I mean, there's really not much to say. If this report is true, there's no way he doesn't go to jail for a long time.
Alex Mashinsky, you've been a very bad boy.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I would say stop, but he's already stopped. So at least that's over.
For me, one of the red flags for Celsius was when I found out they were mining. So they'd spent a ton of money on mining. That didn't make a lot of sense because mining is not a yield per se. So it's a bet on Bitcoin, basically.
I don't understand for the life of me why they got into mining. Even if they were running obviously a Ponzi scheme, but even then it doesn't make sense.
Let's say you're a bank and you take deposits and you lend them out and then you pay an interest rate. So it wouldn't make sense to be a miner because you're basically just literally betting on the price of Bitcoin that way. So you can't promise a rate.
Why wouldn't you just go double long Bitcoin on some derivatives exchange? I don't understand why you'd have to go through the hard path of just mining.
It's literally it's not the return profile, which is yield like anyway. So I find that sketchy. Apparently what Celsius was doing was setting their rates not based on what was economical for them, but based on what competitors were doing. So they're in this race to the top, I guess, in terms of setting attractive rates.
Definitely worked. A lot of retail flocked into it.
For sure.
I mean, the red flag on these guys should have been the ICO. And in this examiner report, it says that the ICO, they lied about how much they raised. So they didn't actually raise the full amount that they targeted, but they just said they did.
Yeah. I mean, the commonality with FTX is clear. There's the token, which they're using as a type of collateral and, effectively using to create non-dilutive financing mechanisms for themselves. I think maybe going on a go-forward basis, if there is a lender in exchange with a native token, I would be very skeptical of that thing.
Yeah, I think a lot of these things should just be registered as securities. Yeah, if you're going to do an exchange token, just register it as a security. I mean, that's what it is, right? If it accrues cash flows.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to give someone upside in your exchange, that's what equity is for. You can use equity. I know it's not very exciting, but
pretty
we already
novel
have a
concept
construct for that. Yeah, invented it 600 years ago.
Equity on chain is a good idea. Now, I understand that's really hard to do from a regulatory perspective right now, but that is where this industry is going. Tokenized securities on chain. So they'll give greater transparency. That's what's happening.
That was always my problem with FTT. I mean, and listen to this podcast, we talk about it many times. My problem was that FTT was behaving like the most junior equity.
Right.
And equity is already the most junior part of the capital stack, basically. And so, now you have two different cap tables and you're promising a rev share to the token holders. And from the perspective of a shareholder, it's really weird that funds are being siphoned out of the corporate entity being distributed to the token holders. So basically when push came to shove, I always thought that the FTT, the token holders would be sacrificed and the shareholders would benefit. So I always wondered why on earth you would hold FTT, because you're just totally exposed.
So I used to always say so I agree with that. The other thing I used to say about FTX when people asked me about it was this FTT thing is going to be a huge problem if and when they try to go public, because I would think that a securities regulator in the United States would take a hard look at that and say there's no disclosures here. How does this token actually work? It is a security, and that would hamper FTX from actually getting public. But then, people that actually understood the industry would actually come back and say, well, Voyager's public and they have that VGX token or whatever the hell that thing was. I guess it was public in Canada, but the point holds that there actually are some companies with tokens that are public. So, but I don't know. The SEC hasn't really opined on one of these yet.
And it's very hard to retire a token once it is outstanding and it's in the hands of
it's been done a couple
retail.
times, but I'd say it's generally it would be a big lift, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, you could have to cash people out. You can't just do a token for equity swap because retail globally can't necessarily own your equity.
You definitely can't do that.
The one example I can think of is Iconomy. Do you remember them?
Yeah, they did an ICO back in 16 or 17.
Yeah, they were an early ICO, and then I think eventually they retired the tokens and did a swap of sorts into a Swiss corporate entity, I believe. I don't know of any other examples. I'd love to see some more.
Speaking of ICOs, did you see this story about Secret Network? So there's a big squabble between the guy who started it, who's the guy behind Enigma, Guy Zisland, and then Tor Bear, who is running the foundation. And Bear has been accused of siphoning off money from the foundation. He's resigned. So there's a big squabble there in that community. They also had this ecosystem fund that they announced. It was like a $200 million ecosystem fund. It's unclear if that's actually like a real thing or who put money into that. So the whole thing is kind of weird. And of course, as you remember, this Enigma thing was hacked at the ICO. So there was a fake ETH address put up like the day before the actual ICO, and people lost a lot of money. So that whole project has been a mess.
Yeah, the whole doctrine of trying to insulate your token from, the SEC or other regulators by putting it in an offshore foundation is insane. It might work, but it's like out of the frying pan into the fire, because now you have these unaccountable foundations, and if the director or board members of those foundations or whatever, the people in charge, if they go haywire, there's no accountability.
It's generally it's not, it has worked in the sense of Ethereum did it that way, and they're out there now, and the thing is functional. It's probably not a security at this point. I would say it's definitely not a security at this point. But even they had huge issues with this layout, and it's usually the human beings. Same thing for Tezos. It's human beings.
Example, that was the one I was thinking of.
They just end up in disputes with each other, and I don't know if that's a foundation specific issue. Maybe it's just a lack of governance in these type of things.
There's no real way for, like, let's say the investors to exert governance and reel in a team that's running a foundation. Like, if it's in the Seychelles or the Cayman or the Isle of Man, what are you going to do? Like, appeal to the local courts there if you think that the team is misbehaving?
Good luck.
You're totally out of luck. So in your attempts to shield your tokens from, regulatory oversight, you're totally exposed from a governance perspective. So you're in a worse position. So the default is probably going to be like embezzlement and these things being treated as slush funds. And the exception is when things actually go well and you happen to find some profoundly ethical people that are good stewards of capital.
I think there's a lot of these stories out there that haven't been reported yet, actually. I've heard quite a few projects run into issues on this front around embezzlement, around just bad behavior happening at these foundations, and investors really not having the recourse to do it. And, sometimes it works out that the token launches and people get their money, but not before some gets siphoned. It's a really, it's a pirate ship.
DAOs too. I mean, DAOs are just vectors for, I think the concept of a DAO is a good one, but if you look at a lot of these DAOs, it's just insiders extracting funds wantonly from the treasury. I mean, I'd love to see a deeper dive by some journalists. Maybe stop interviewing these stupid academics that think Tether causes the price of Bitcoin and actually do some real investigating, maybe.
But so this is all a clown show, right? Like this makes our industry look horrible because it is horrible, and it's a bunch of JV actors that are building vaporware that are doing these type of things typically. But that's because the entrepreneurs that want to build real world things with tokens that they want to be securities, there's just no path forward here. So if you walk into the SEC and you say, I've got a security token, has cash flows, I'm going to fully disclose how we do it, I'm going to abide by all the laws and the regulations, they say, let us know. Hold on a second. And then you wait and you wait and you wait. And there's just no clarity. There's no ATS venues that allow these things to trade on the secondary markets that are really approved at scale. And so there's just no path here. And so it's not that this industry is just by default corrupt. It's just that there's no framework in the United States to actually push this forward. And the SEC says that they have this under control, and they clearly don't. I mean, the SEC really doesn't have a handle on this stuff.
Yeah, if you come to the table hat in hand, you say, okay, look, we want to work with you. You end up getting the library credits treatment. You get eviscerated by the SEC, eviscerated. And so many entrepreneurs go for the FTX option. They just go offshore. And then...
And the banks have the same problem too. So the banks are really running into problems with the SEC around this. It's called SAB 121. So it's a staff accounting bulletin number 121 that the SEC put out. And it was put out in, I think, April. And it says that banks who want to offer cryptocurrency custody need to treat the customer assets as an asset on their balance sheet. So let's say you're Bank of New York Mellon or State Street and you want to offer crypto custody. It's obviously going to be super popular, right? You're going to have a great business. And let's say you get $10 billion worth of Bitcoin on your balance sheet that you're holding on behalf of customers. What the SEC is saying is that you should take a capital charge on that. That should impact your capital ratios. And so
crypto gets the highest risk weighting, right?
Yeah, and so you're why would that be on your balance sheet? I mean, that's not the bank's money. They're custodying on behalf of their customers. This does not apply to other types of assets. You wouldn't say, hey, you hold my stock, so like that's on your balance sheet. It just doesn't make any sense. And so some banks are fighting back and trying to work to change this guidance and to make it such that this can operate more like any other type of asset. Other banks are just throwing in the towel. And so we won't maybe toss some of those names out there, but there are banks that are just not doing crypto anymore that had publicly said that they're going to be in it. And this accounting thing through the SEC is the reason they're not doing it. And so that's a problem. And in the SEC's job, one of the prongs of their mandate is to promote capital formation. They're actively trying to stop capital formation with respect to this new technology category, which is a huge problem. I mean, the SEC was not elected by the people. The SEC works for the people.
It feels like we're becoming Venezuela. That's just my takeaway from all this. I feel like property rights are being eroded in this country.
It's not a great set of facts here with respect to the SEC. We do have people at the SEC that get it. We're lucky that people like Hester Peirce are pushing back on this, and that she gets the program. But that's just one of 5 commissioners.
Look at the Federal Reserve too. I mean, the custodial denial is tough. I'm reading between the lines and seeing that the Fed wants to completely eliminate connectivity between the banking system and crypto to the extent they can. The SPDIs clearly don't seem to be progressing. The OCC has been very critical of crypto whenever they write any guidance. And the FDIC hates crypto. And we also have a White House that just put out some new, trying to bully Congress basically into marginalizing crypto. We have, high-profile senators like Liz Warren wrote a letter this week to the PCAOB, the basically subsidiary of the SEC that audits auditors, saying don't touch crypto. So the whole apparatus is basically hostile. It's a hostile environment.
It's a very hostile environment in the US to build one of these businesses. And that's why a lot of this innovation is happening elsewhere. I mean, there's tremendous growth in the cryptocurrency sector. There's a lot of US businesses that are doing really well and they've figured out a way to navigate it. But there's also just a ton of capital formation happening outside the United States, which is, you would think, not a great strategy. I mean, at the early days of the internet, if we had a regulatory posture that said, hey, like the telephone companies are going to get to dictate the path forward here, I don't think we would like the way that ended.
So there's actually new stuff on FTX, as there is every week.
FTX crime family update. All right. The Department of Justice filed a complaint at the end of last week after we had already gone to production that Sam Bankman-Fried is actively interfering with witnesses. This includes messaging a number of former employees, including FTX U.S. General Counsel Ryan Miller on Signal. Later this week, a judge heard this and ruled that SBF can no longer use Signal and he can no longer contact former employees. This guy really has a pair on him, huh? I can't believe how brazen this is. He's actively tampering with witnesses. This guy's a maniac.
This supports the theory that he's just totally delusional and thinks that he can somehow right the ship here if he just gets in a room and sits down with these people.
I mean, he's reaching out to John Ray, just like, hey, I'm going to be in New York. This is crazy.
I'm now thinking that it was the wrong decision to let him out of jail.
He also, his lawyers submitted, and they said that he should be able to access the funds. So all these like loose wallets that were moving around that were clearly him, the lawyer said that he should be able to move those. So that was denied too. But I don't understand why you'd even raise that as an issue.
The guy's a menace.
It's going to be interesting to see if they get an independent examiner report. There's some people fighting against that, including John Ray, saying that they don't need one. It's going to be too expensive. But the independent examiner report is what is going to take down Mashinsky here. And so if you don't get one, and let's just say SBF pleads guilty, all this is just going to fall on SBF, and you're not going to figure out, who knew what when, who else was involved in this. I think the examiner report is critical here to figure out, who else should go to jail. You had this independent examiner report in Enron, and you also had it in Madoff, and it resulted, I think, in way more recovery. There's just more facts get put out there, and you can follow more trails. You can go claw back more money, and you can, we need to figure out this toy ventures thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's not just a matter of Sam Bankman-Fried. There's all of his lieutenants and all of his beneficiaries. Speaking of which, the Effective Ventures Foundation, which was a charity of his, is now being investigated by the British Charity Commission.
Do they have subpoena authority over there at the British Charity Commission? What can they do?
I don't know. I mean, I guess the question is, was Sam doing this cynically? Basically trying to whitewash his reputation? Or, and this is my theory, did he actually believe that he was a foot soldier of effective altruism with his lunatic utilitarian philosophy and genuinely believed that he needed to accumulate as much as wealth as possible in order to, save the world from a rogue AI or whatever the hell it was that he believed in, and that doing fraud was acceptable in that paradigm because he meant that he could accumulate as much wealth as possible? That's my theory.
Can you imagine, because I think that theory is probably in play. Can you imagine being one of the lawyers right now that's trying to workshop a defense? I think that could go. I think you could say,
"Is that what they?
Hey, I'm crazy. This is actually what I thought. Like I am that insane." And it was a mix of Adderall and all these Parkinson's disease patches that I was on, and I just got myself to the point where I just actually believed all this stuff. I
mean, I think effective altruism should be characterized as a mental disorder for sure, because the utilitarianism is a morally bankrupt philosophy where you think it doesn't matter what you do to achieve your objectives, you can justify the short-term actions, however bad they may be, if the outcomes are really good. And
if someone tells me they're an effective altruist, I am running for the hills.
I mean, Sam admitted this he talked about this many times over. Like, yeah, I have a different attitude to risk taking. It makes sense to take risks if the payoffs are really big. So one risk is doing fraud if the payoff is great.
Yeah.
Payoff wasn't good this time. But I would really question the integrity of anyone that believes these kinds of things.
I think it's a very dangerous way to think. Yeah. It's
similar to socialism in many respects. Like socialism, you're saying like, okay, you can, subsume the individual and expropriate people's wealth for the glorious revolution and for this utopian outcome. So it's a similar model of thinking. It's like no sacrifice is too great if the ultimate outcome is really idyllic. It's just that in practice, you never get to the utopia at the end. So it never ends up being worth it.
Never happens that way. So I'm sure we'll have more on FTX next week, but that was kind of the big update. No more Sam with Signal, which is a shame. Did you read this ARC Big Ideas 2023 report? This thing is always good.
Not yet, actually, but big fan of their work over there.
A lot of heady Bitcoin price predictions in there.
Yeah. We'll put in the show notes.
Put in the show notes. It's always worth a read. They do a good job over there. I think Yassine does the crypto stuff over there. So shout out to Yassine. Good job. Also like the Coin Metrics report on MEV. We should put that in the show notes too. On-chain execution, MEV. It's a pretty deep report there. I like it.
Yeah, one of the best reports I've actually read on MEV. So yeah, recommend that one.
Put that one in the show notes.
So I sometimes during the course of the week, things happen to me, and then I think to myself, oh, that'll be funny to talk about on the podcast.
Yeah.
And then I always forget it. And then when it comes to the podcast, I forget what the funny thing was. So,
we forgot to talk about Ordinals. Is that?
Oh my God. Yeah. How did we forget Ordinals? So there's Ordinals, and then I just remembered the other thing I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
So,
all right. Well, you pick.
All right. So I was in Mexico this week for a wedding, and I had a spare day. And so I was on the Yucatan Peninsula, right? Yep. And I was like, okay, well, I'll go to see the Mayan ruins in Mexico. And they're actually really cool because you're basically in the jungle, and then there's just these gigantic pyramids sticking out of the jungle with no like real evidence that anyone's attempted to describe them or, but like normally when you go to some sort of important archaeological site, like there'll be a plaque or something explaining what it is. At least in the ones I went to, they didn't have that. But we happened to have a guide there with us. And so she was explaining a bunch of it, but she was very, perhaps overly sympathetic to the Maya, like the Maya civilization. Okay. So every single hieroglyphic that you would see, and they had tons of these, would depict like emperors and kings like crushing captives and like sacrificing them, right? Every single one. And our guide was like, well, yes, there was some human sacrifice, but really not that much. And also it was an honor to them. And, the Aztecs were way worse, actually. And so she was like totally in denial about the human sacrifice. And there was like this game they would play. And so there were actually courts that they built, like stone courts. And there was like a ball game they played. I think it was called like Poke to Poke or something. And apparently the winning team would get sacrificed, which didn't make sense to me. Like
the winning team would get sacrificed? So you win. So it's like pickleball and the winner dies?
But so why would you want to win? Like obviously you would just try and lose in that case.
What a terrible game.
I don't get it.
No wonder that civilization didn't make it.
And I'm like, well, so why would anyone want to win the game? And she's like, oh, it didn't matter. Basically, everybody would get sacrificed. In the end, they were all captives. And I'm like, didn't you just tell me that they didn't do sacrifices that much?
Are you sure she wasn't just a bad tour guide here?
I mean, she seemed very enthusiastic about her job, but she was very focused on defending the reputation of the Maya, which I don't know if this film is historically accurate, but if you've seen Mel Gibson's film Apocalypto,
I have not.
It is a gruesome film. It's about the Maya. It's actually really great. I recommend it. So anyway, I just found it extremely amusing, the contrast between like the archaeological evidence right in front of our faces, which was like all of these drawings of people being sacrificed, and then her insistence that they actually didn't really do it that much.
It's just, I'm sure there'll be an equivalent for our era for people saying, oh, they weren't that bad. These scammers weren't that bad. They're effective altruists.
Maybe archaeologists of the future can whitewash the crypto industry too.
It wasn't that bad. I did want to get your take on ordinals, and I'm going to butcher the hell out of this because I have not been spending a lot of time on this, but from what I can gather, there's NFTs on Bitcoin are a thing again. To me, it looks a lot like colored coins or open asset protocol or some of these 2015 things like tagging UTXOs, tagging Satoshis. But what the heck's going on here?
Yeah, so actually Dennis Porto is a good introductory post on it, which I'll put in the show notes. I think he gives it a better treatment than I could. So, I mean, to be clear, like there have been NFTs on Bitcoin since a long time ago, like going on 7 years. Rare Pepes were on Bitcoin. Spells of Genesis, I want to say. Like all kinds of stuff. And then, obviously Bitcoin's not the main place NFTs are issued. But I think it was Casey Rodarmore, if I'm not mistaken, figured out how to create a new NFT protocol, taking advantage of Taproot and SegWit. And the way it works is basically tracking individual Satoshis. So in Bitcoin, of course, you don't have accounts. You track different quantities of Bitcoin. So it's not like Matt has 100 Bitcoin, Nick has 50 or anything. It's like Matt has all these different amounts of Bitcoin aggregated in his wallet, and they all have their individual histories, and you can track them over time. So Ordinals assigns individual Satoshis identities, and you can attach data to them. And apparently Taproot means that you can stuff a ton of data in the witness, which is basically the signature part of the transaction. And they figured out how to put arbitrary amounts of data all the way up into the full size of the block, basically. So together with segregated witness and Taproot, you have this interesting schema now, because segregated witness gave kind of a fee discount to the quote unquote witness data. So it's also kind of cheaper to embed this data into the block from the fee perspective. So now you have people filling up entire blocks, which has never been done before, with some would say junk data, others say, it's images and all kinds of content, there's audio files. It's really causing a lot of controversy, I'd say.
So Adam Back had a post that he deleted where he said that it would be okay for miners to just discriminate and not push out blocks that had these type of transactions in it, which to me is crazy.
Yeah, some of these transactions are quote unquote non-standard, which means they wouldn't be relayed by normal nodes. So just recently, yesterday, I think Luxor, the mining pool, mined a 4 megabyte block, which is the biggest block ever. And it contained a Bitcoin wizard illustration. I think it was meant to be a representation of Udi Wertheimer, as far as I can tell.
Okay.
And that block had to be sent to them directly because it was a non-standard transaction.
It just wouldn't have made it through the mempool? Is that the drill?
Yeah, nodes wouldn't have relayed it. And the fees were clearly paid out of band as well.
Yeah, because there's no fee on that, right?
Yeah, virtually none. And they would have had to get paid for the opportunity cost of not including other fee-bearing transactions. So many Bitcoiners consider this like a denial of service attack, similar to miners used to mine empty blocks. And so in this case, the issue is that nodes would have to download all this data when they're doing the initial download. They could discard it later. So, it wouldn't necessarily be in your permanent node if you didn't want it, but you would have to download it in the initial download. And so that's a lot of data, of course, because blocks are not always 4 megabytes. In fact, that's almost never the case. Typically blocks are in the, 1.5 to 2.5 megabyte range. Now this Ordinals thing, NFTs, the data being inserted directly on Bitcoin, stuffed into the witness data, it means that you're guaranteeing almost that every block is 4 megabytes in size. That's not, I don't see a problem with that, because that was the deal that was struck with SegWit. SegWit did effectively increase the potential size of a block to 4 megabytes from 1 megabyte. It's just that in practice, blocks were always smaller than that, because it was practically impossible to create a normal block with that much witness data. So now we're reaching the theoretical limits practically. And some people don't like that because of the additional data overhead, basically.
So I guess if I was to straw man both sides, so one side that doesn't like this is saying data overhead doesn't work. This is going to make it harder to run a full node. It's not good for the network. The other side is saying some combination of, hey, we need to have a fee market on Bitcoin. This is just more density to go into the blocks. We should be encouraging people to build things. We're going to have this potential issue at some point where we don't have a block reward and we're going to need fees paid on the network. This is just a good thing to promote more activity. Then, other people in that camp would say, we just need more technical innovation on Bitcoin, and the project is stagnant and we need to have more vibrancy. NFTs were on Bitcoin first. Now they're living productive lives on Ethereum and Solana, and a lot of the innovation in that sector is just not on Bitcoin. So why wouldn't we try to have that on Bitcoin? So that's, those are kind of the two poles of the argument, I would say.
Yeah, it gets to a really deep conflict of visions in Bitcoin. It's basically the monetarist view of Bitcoin versus the more pluralistic non-monetarist view, I suppose. And for the most part, the monetarists have won on Bitcoin. Like if you go back to the olden days, like counterparty transactions were deliberately made non-standard. James Presswich talked about this on an episode with us back in the day, which is a great episode. So the kind of Luke Dash school of thought has historically mostly prevailed on Bitcoin. Basically, Bitcoin was envisioned as being very single track. It's for one thing, which is governing specifically Bitcoin transactions, not transfers of any other unit, non-native units. Historically, Tether was on Bitcoin on Omni, and then it moved away to other blockchains. NFTs mostly moved away. And so that school of thought is mainly dominated. So basically the idea is parsimony, a low data load, really not toying with the block size too much, not adding complexity. And then, historically, I would say the people that wanted to use Bitcoin for other stuff have kind of been marginalized or eventually found greener pastures elsewhere. This is reviving that debate now. I guess, I'm sympathetic to a certain degree with the camp that's like, well, you're kind of not following the spirit of the law as far as the discounted witness space is concerned. So it's almost like Bitcoin's underpricing this kind of data insertion. But also the whole Bitcoin ideology is, let's not tweak and change the code arbitrarily, just on a very reactive basis. So we are kind of stuck with this, as far as I can tell. So people are going to have to make their peace with it. And, the people saying that, pools should be filtering this out or miners should be filtering this out or something, those are the same people that preach that Bitcoin is leaderless and has no governance. So kind of pick a side, basically.
It's always hard with these Bitcoin civil wars because I never know what side to pick. During the beginning parts of the big block size debate, I was a big blocker. And I was like, this Bitcoin XT thing makes a ton of sense. And then I later changed my mind and I realized that the small blocks were better. So my gut reaction on this thing is I want Bitcoin NFTs. I think that's really cool. But who knows? Maybe I'll think differently 6 months from now.
It doesn't seem honestly that harmful to Bitcoin, and it's funny. And the people that are really upset about it are mostly odious and lame people. So basically, the decision is clear.
Yeah. I think in general, like anything that Blockstream is pushing, I'm on the other side of at this point. So.
Yeah, undeniably. And it's very hypocritical of Adam Back to call for censorship on Bitcoin. Bitcoiners, they discredit themselves so much if they start calling for censorship. It's just embarrassing.
Yeah. It's not a great look. In other news, I just put my elbow through this dress shirt. Do you see that? I wish we were doing that.
How's that possible?
This is the third time I've done this in like 7 days.
What? The same shirt? Different shirts?
No, different shirts. I had to leave a shirt in New York City this week.
Do you have like really pointy elbows or something?
I think these just shirts. I need a new run of shirts. These are Brooks Bro shirts, but I don't know. They're a couple years old, but I don't know. It's 3 elbow blowouts in 1 week. That's got to be a record.
I was just reading an article about how Brooks Brothers cheapened their brand.
They went bankrupt, and now the shirts are terrible. I don't know what's going on. I need a better. I need to, maybe I should just start wearing T-shirts.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to dress up as a VC anymore. You can just dress down.
I think I'm like the most dressed up VC. I'm always like wearing a collared shirt. I really need to. I dress like I'm still at Fidelity.
I think that you should have your own style and not feel compared to wear the weird VC uniform of like, I guess like Lulu pants and like sneakers. And
I do like t-shirt. The Lulu pants, but yeah, you got to stick with what you're good at. And I'm like collared shirt, button down. That's kind of always been my thing.
Yeah. It just feels really conformist to wear the like Silicon Valley uniform.
No. Yeah.
You got to find your own style. Yeah.
So what was your take on Brady here?
So he's done for good, right?
Yeah, he's done. He's going to be a Fox announcer. It looks like he's going to potentially knock Greg Olson out of that booth, the number 1 booth, and he's going to be the color man on the Fox broadcast.
I think he's pretty charismatic. Sometimes like world-class athletes are not, and it's painful to see them stick around in commentary roles, but I think he's going to do a good job.
Yeah, I don't know. It'd be interesting. Peyton Manning does a great job.
He's excellent. I mean, like, think about Lionel Messi. Well, maybe because he doesn't speak a lot of English, but he just doesn't seem like he's a great, probably greatest soccer player of all time. But I wouldn't want him as an announcer at all.
I don't know anything about him. Never watched him play.
Not one time.
Messi? I don't know.
Didn't watch the World Cup.
Was he in the? I watched the overtime of the match. Was he? He was in that one, right?
Yes, he was playing.
My wife walked downstairs and I had it on and she's like, "What are you doing?" Like,
really?
Help with the kids. I was like, "No, this is like an important soccer game. Like, I have to."
You don't understand.
People are going to be talking about this. I need to. It's over. And it went to like the penalty kicks. So we have to keep this on. I can't stand soccer.
Good for you for sticking up for yourself in that moment. I mean, it's like the one soccer game you have to watch every 4 years.
I think it's like the only soccer that I want to watch is the last couple minutes of the World Cup and then kids soccer.
I mean, it was a good game. Like, you weren't let down.
It was a good game. Yeah. I don't know. Well, I only watched the end, but like the penalty kicks were fun. If the whole thing was penalty kicks, I would get a lot of enjoyment out of that. Other than that though, it's just like, here's how to fix soccer. Make it the size of like a hockey arena, take a couple of people off the court, and then you can hit each other.
Okay. I'm interested.
That's a lot more fun. Otherwise, it's just like you're kicking it 35, 40 yards. People are just standing there. There's a couple of people running around like crazy, but the whole thing makes no sense. And then the score is like 0-0 every single time.
Well, ever since I visited the Mayan ruins, I have been thinking to myself, I really want to see a historical reenactment of Pok-ta-Pok.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the arena, it's like kind of like a trough between 2 pyramids, and it's pretty steep, and then there's a ring at the top. And apparently you use either your elbows or your knees to get the ball through the ring so that you could be sacrificed. So I want to know what the gameplay was like. I mean,
we should figure that out.
Has anyone recreated a match of Poke-to-Poke? I need to know this.
I'm curious about that. All right, I think we're at our time here. We've got a very cold situation up here in Boston, so it's going to get cold here this weekend.
Can't relate.
All right, everyone, have a safe and healthy weekend. We will see you on Monday.